10 months after surgery, Tyreek Hill has finally revealed the terrifying truth about his leg. He admits it still hasn't recovered the way he hoped, and one shocking detail about his condition is leaving fans seriously worried about what's coming next. Let me break it down. 10 months ago, Tyreek Hill was the fastest man in the NFL. Wednesday night, he was sitting in front of a camera, filming his own body mid-rehab, describing a leg that still won't listen to him. The video dropped on Hill's social media and instantly ricocheted through every major sports outlet in the country. Hill is shown jogging, jumping, working through pool exercises, and pushing through a variety of drills. But it's what he says over the footage that stopped people cold. Hill said it had been about 10 months after doing 2 surgeries, that his left leg was the one he injured, and that he had no power in his left leg, so he was trying to regain all the power back in it. But it was one day at a time. Read that again. 10 months, 2 surgeries, and still no power. This isn't a guy complaining about soreness or a tweak. This is one of the most explosive athletes of his generation telling you, on camera, that the engine underneath him isn't running right. It's the kind of update that suggests the free agent wide receiver could still be a long way from returning to the NFL. And then came the part of the video that really made people sit up. Hill didn't stop at describing his rehab. He went back to the hospital room, to the conversation nobody wants to have with a doctor. He said they told him he might not be able to walk again, that the doctor had basically told him they didn't know what was going to happen with his future. And now, look at him. God is good, he said. That's the terrifying truth sitting underneath the title of this story. Not just no power, not just a slow recovery, a direct on-camera admission that medical professionals once told Tyreek Hill his walking, not his career, his walking was in question. Let's rewind to understand exactly how bad this injury actually was, because the no power comment doesn't land the same way unless you know what his leg went through in the first place. Back in late September, Miami was hosting the Jets on Monday Night Football. Hill had just hauled in a catch from Tua Tagovailoa near the sideline, a routine, forgettable 10-yard gain in a game the Dolphins were about to win. Then a defender caught him as he went out of bounds, and Hill's leg twisted awkwardly underneath him. The broadcast cut away almost immediately, but not before cameras caught something no one wanted to see. It appeared his knee was facing the wrong direction. Coach Mike McDaniel got to him on the field, and even amid the chaos, Hill's response became its own story. While being carted off with an air cast on his leg, Hill forcefully clapped his hands several times, smiled, and laughed in response to the crowd. McDaniel later admitted it was almost unsettling to watch, saying afterward that Hill was probably in the best spirits of any player he'd ever seen go down with an injury like that, even though it's such a terrible experience to witness. According to McDaniel, Hill kept saying he was good and to make sure the team got the win. He was locked in on his teammates, even as his legs sat in a cast. He was taken off in an ambulance. Imaging at the hospital confirmed it wasn't just a scare. ESPN's Adam Schefter reported that Hill had torn his ACL along with other ligaments in that knee, meaning he would miss the remainder of the season. A dislocated knee is already one of the scariest injuries in sports. It's not a joint slipping, it's the bones themselves losing alignment. Add multiple torn ligaments on top, and you're talking about a completely different level of trauma than your average ACL tear. The morning after the injury, Hill posted from his hospital bed ahead of a surgery that would try to repair all of it in one shot. He kept it simple. He was headed in, and he asked people to keep him in their prayers. His agent, Drew Rosenhaus, spoke to a Miami station before the procedure and rattled off the list of fears running through everyone's mind. Whether there were torn ligaments, torn cartilage, broken bones, blood flow problems, or God forbid, nerve damage. Every single one of those questions had to be answered on an operating table. The surgery, according to Rosenhaus, went well, and doctors were able to fix the damage in a single procedure rather than needing a second follow-up surgery immediately. McDaniel said afterward that early signs on nerve function were good and that doctors hadn't identified anything requiring more than the one operation. Everyone breathed easier. The goal, right from the start, was to have Hill ready for the beginning of the following season. That target didn't hold. 10 months later, instead of pads and cleats, Hill was in a gym, filming himself jogging on turf, working through a pool, and openly admitting that the leg still isn't firing the way it needs to. The distance between goal ready for the season and still no power in my leg, 10 months later, is the entire story here. And it's the reason this video hit as hard as it did. To understand why no power in my leg is such a devastating sentence coming from Tyreek Hill specifically, you have to understand what his entire career has been built on. This is a man whose nickname is literally an animal known for outrunning everything else on the planet. Hill's game was never about size or strength in the traditional receiver sense. It was pure, uncatchable, top-end speed. Defenders didn't get beat by Tyreek Hill. They got left behind by him. That speed is what took a fifth-round pick out of West Alabama and turned him into a Super Bowl champion, a perennial All-Pro, and one of the most feared offensive weapons of his generation. He built that reputation in Kansas City first, winning it all with Patrick Mahomes before a blockbuster trade sent him to Miami ahead of the 2022 season. Miami didn't just want him, they paid for him. The Dolphins signed him to a 4-year, $120 million contract that made him the highest-paid wideout in the league at the time. Hill showed up to his introductory press conference with the same swagger that defined his playing style, telling reporters flatly that he didn't blink, that he didn't believe in pressure. He made the pressure, and for a while, that swagger was backed up on the field. He responded to the contract with one of the best seasons of his career, catching 119 balls for 1,710 yards and 7 touchdowns. Across his 4 years in Miami before the injury, he was an All-Pro in his first 2 seasons with the Dolphins, playing in 54 games with 340 catches for 4,733 yards and 27 touchdowns. But if you follow Hill's last 2 seasons closely, you'll notice the cracks were already showing before that knee ever got twisted underneath him in September. In 2024, he played through a torn ligament in his wrist, grinding out a season that, statistically, was a step down from his peak. He still started all 17 games that year, finishing with 81 receptions for 959 yards and 6 touchdowns. Respectable numbers for most receivers, but a clear dip for a player who'd once cleared 1,700 yards in a single season. Off the field, things were getting complicated too. He was detained in an altercation with law enforcement outside Hard Rock Stadium in 2024. An incident that added to a growing sense that his time in Miami was fraying at the edges. By October of the following year, Hill was publicly unsure about his own future in the league, telling a former teammate's podcast that whether he kept playing beyond that season would come down to how he felt and where his mindset was at the moment. Then the knee happened, and every uncertain thread, the wrist, the off-field noise, the ambiguous future, got yanked tight around one central question. Could this body even hold up anymore? That question hung over the entire rehab process, mostly in silence, for months. Fans got the occasional glimpse, a Snapchat clip days after surgery showing him up and walking, albeit with the help of a walker, just 3 days post-procedure, remarkably fast progress by any standard. Rosenhaus kept the public messaging upbeat throughout, insisting there was no nerve damage, no blood flow issues, no broken bones, and that the cartilage in the knee was fine. But no complications and no power are 2 very different diagnoses. One tells you the operation went cleanly. The other tells you the body still hasn't rebuilt what the injury took away. And for an athlete whose entire brand, whose entire game, whose entire market value is tied to explosiveness, that second diagnosis is the one that actually determines what comes next. That's exactly why the Dolphins made the decision they made in February, cutting ties with the very player who defined their offense for 4 years. And it's exactly why, months later, an entire league full of teams still hasn't made a move. Here's where the story stops being purely about a knee and starts being about a career at a crossroads. In February, the Miami Dolphins made their call. The team released Hill, an 8-time Pro Bowler and 5-time All-Pro, while he was still rehabbing from the major leg injury, with insiders noting it was unclear when or if he'd play in 2026. The business logic behind the timing was blunt. Hill turned 32 that March, and his release saved the Dolphins $22.8 million against the salary cap, money the team badly needed as it began tearing down and rebuilding its roster under new leadership. Hill didn't go quietly bitter, though. He posted a farewell message that read like a man choosing his own narrative rather than accepting somebody else's. His statement thanked the organization, teammates, and fans for what he called an unforgettable 4 years, ending the caption with a declaration that the cheetah would be back, born again. That was February. This is July. And in between those 2 dates sits 5 straight months of a superstar receiver walking the open market with 0 takers. It's not that teams have written him off entirely. His agent has been making the rounds, insisting Hill still has value once he's cleared. Rosenhaus went on a national sports show and made it clear his client wasn't just hoping to catch on with anybody. He wanted a real shot at a title. Rosenhaus described the injury as anything but your run-of-the-mill ACL, calling it a multiple ligament injury. while still insisting Hill was on track for the start of the regular season. That framing, "on track for the regular season," is worth sitting with for a second, because it's the same promise that got made back in the hospital, back when the goal was a clean return by the following year's kickoff. 10 months of rehab later, and the player himself is the one contradicting that optimism on camera, describing a leg with no power in it. So who's actually out there watching? Speculation has bounced around several rosters. There's been chatter about a reunion in Kansas City, the franchise where it all started for him, where he built a Super Bowl-winning connection with Mahomes, and where the front office recently brought back an offensive coordinator Hill has publicly supported for years. Analysts have pointed to Kansas City's need at receiver as reason enough for the fit to make sense on paper. Other outlets have floated Washington, pointing to a vacant depth chart spot after the Commanders let a veteran receiver walk. Buffalo has come up too, given Hill's own comments in the past, ranking their quarterback among his favorites to catch passes from, although that market would require the Bills to actually clear cap room to make a deal work. None of it has moved past speculation. Hill remains a free agent, as players around the league wrap up their summer break ahead of training camp, with no real indication throughout the offseason that any team has come close to signing him. One analyst summed up the league's collective hesitation bluntly, noting that most teams will probably wait until Hill is closer to full health before showing real interest, meaning it could still be a month or two, or longer, before any offer materializes. And this is where the no power video becomes more than an emotional moment. It becomes a market signal. A player posting rehab footage during the exact week that veterans are reporting to camp isn't just documenting a personal journey. It's a receiver reminding 32 front offices that he still exists, while simultaneously handing them the exact data point that makes them cautious. Teams don't sign hope. They sign healthy hamstrings, healthy explosion, healthy plant and drive mechanics off the line. And right now, by his own description, that mechanism still isn't rebuilt. There's also been talk that Hill himself might not rush it. One report raised the possibility that Hill could consider taking a gap year out of the league entirely, to try to get fully right for a future season, rather than forcing his way back onto a roster before his body's ready. That's a real option on the table, not a fallback, but a deliberate strategic pause from a player who has nothing left to prove statistically and everything to lose physically if he comes back too early and re-injures the same leg, which brings us to the actual footage itself, the video everyone's talking about, and what it shows, frame by frame, about where his body genuinely is right now. Strip away the caption and the "God is good" message for a second, and just look at what the tape itself reveals, because that's ultimately the part that will decide his future more than any quote will. The video shows Hill doing pool work, running short distances on turf, jumping, and moving through a basketball court setting. A mixed bag of low-impact and higher-impact drills. The kind of layered rehab progression physical therapists use to slowly reintroduce explosive movement without overloading a joint that's still healing. At one point in the clip, Hill even notes he wasn't technically supposed to be running yet, joking that he likes to challenge himself a little, a small detail, but a telling one. 10 months in, and his rehab team is still holding him back from full-speed work. That's not the timeline of a player who's a few weeks from a helmet. Analysts who watched the footage closely didn't sugarcoat what they saw. One breakdown described Hill running in the video at a fraction of his usual speed, noting that while he appeared to still possess instinctive explosiveness in his step, it wasn't nearly at the level required to line up against NFL defenses. That's about as direct an assessment as you'll get from people who watch tape for a living. The flashes are there. The foundation isn't. It's worth remembering exactly what kind of injury that foundation is being rebuilt from. A straightforward ACL tear is already one of the most feared injuries in football, typically costing a player 9 months to a year. But a knee dislocation is a rare and severe injury where the tibia and femur themselves lose their normal alignment at the joint. A fundamentally different, more violent event than an isolated ligament tear or a kneecap simply slipping out of place. Layer multiple torn ligaments on top of that dislocation, and you're not just asking one structure to heal, you're asking an entire joint's worth of stabilizers to regrow strength and coordination at the same time, in the right sequence, without the leg buckling under real load. That's almost certainly what no power actually means in practical terms. It's not necessarily pain. Hill himself made that distinction. The issue isn't discomfort, it's strength. The neuromuscular signal from brain to muscle to tendon to bone that lets a sprinter explode out of a break isn't just about the ligaments holding. It's about months of atrophy and the surrounding muscle groups being rebuilt from near zero. For most athletes, that's a grind measured in small percentage gains. For Hill, whose value was always tied to elite, top-of-the-scale speed rather than merely functional speed, closing that final gap between healthy enough to jog and healthy enough to separate from an NFL cornerback is a much steeper climb. And that gap is exactly what makes his own words in the video land the way they do. Because before he ever gets to the optimistic ending, before the look at me now, before God is good, he has to walk you back through the moment that makes all of this rehab necessary in the first place. He has to tell you what the doctors actually said in that hospital room, in the days right after the surgery, when nobody, not his agent, not his coach, not the medical staff, knew for certain what his leg would even be capable of again. That's the part of this story that turns a routine injury update into the terrifying truth the title promises. Because most athletes who blow out a knee get told about missed time. They get told about a year of rehab, maybe a slight decline in burst. What Hill says he was told was categorically different. A conversation about whether walking itself, not football, was even guaranteed. This is the sentence that turned a routine rehab clip into a story that spread across every major sports outlet in the country within hours. Buried in the middle of that same workout video, right after describing the lack of power in his leg, Hill shifted from present tense rehab talk to something much heavier, a memory. He said they told him he might not be able to walk again, that the doctors had basically told him they didn't know what was going to happen with his future. And now, look at him. Sit with that for a second. Not you'll miss a season, not your speed might not fully return. The actual conversation, by Hill's own account, was about whether he'd walk normally again at all. That's a category of medical conversation reserved for the most severe orthopedic trauma, the kind of injury that in a lot of cases doesn't end a career so much as it threatens basic mobility for the rest of a person's life. And he said it almost matter-of-factly, tucked into an Instagram caption alongside workout clips, ending not with despair but with gratitude, crediting a higher power for where he's ended up 10 months later. That contrast is exactly why the clip cut through. A superstar sharing genuine fear from a hospital bed, followed immediately by footage of him jogging and jumping under his own power, months after being told that might not happen. It's a story of survival wrapped inside what was ostensibly just a training update. It also reframes everything that came before it in this story. The clapping on the cart, the "I'm good, just get the win" message to McDaniel in the middle of the worst moment of his career. The upbeat statements from his agent about no nerve damage, no blood flow issues. All of that optimism, all of that positivity in October was happening in the shadow of a private conversation that was, by Hill's own telling, far darker than the public messaging led on. So where does that leave things now? Hill is 32. He's a free agent for the first time in his career, unattached to any team as camps open around the league. He's currently walking without a brace, which by any measure of where he started, carted off with his leg in an air cast, hospitalized overnight, warned about a future that might not include walking at all, is a genuinely remarkable point to have reached. But walking without a brace and separating from press coverage at NFL speed are two entirely different bars. And right now, by his own admission, he hasn't cleared the second one. There's no fixed date attached to what comes next. Rosenhaus continues to say the goal is still a season debut. Hill himself won't commit to a specific timeline, saying in one of his own recent posts only that things were looking good, without wanting to put a number on it. Teams around the league are watching the same footage everyone else is. Some see a player defying long odds after being told he might never walk again. Others see a receiver who still 10 months out hasn't rebuilt the power a football field requires. What's not in question is the injury itself, or the conversation that came with it. Tyreek Hill dislocated his knee, tore multiple ligaments including his ACL, went through 2 surgeries, and was told by doctors that his ability to walk again wasn't guaranteed. 10 months later, he's walking, he's jogging, he's jumping on a basketball court in a video he chose to post himself. Whether that road leads back to an NFL sideline is still being written, but the fact that it leads anywhere at all, after the words his own doctors used, is the part of this story that's impossible to argue with. Tyreek Hill's latest injury update is hard to ignore. Yahoo Sports. Tyreek Hill post-workout video says still no power in leg. ESPN. WR Tyreek Hill. No power in left leg after surgeries. KNBR. Tyreek Hill makes concerning admission about his knee. Larry Brown Sports. Tyreek Hill reveals lingering effects of 2 surgeries before 2026 season. Yahoo Sports. Tyreek Hill injury update. Dolphins star tore multiple ligaments in knee, SI. Dolphins WR Tyreek Hill has season-ending knee surgery. AOL. Tyreek Hill drops 3-word message after undergoing surgery. Sportskeeda. Dolphins WR Tyreek Hill undergoes season-ending surgery. CBS Sports. Tyreek Hill out for season with torn ligaments. NFL.com. Tyreek Hill's NFL future uncertain after knee injury. CBS Sports. Tyreek Hill knee injury explained. Midwest Orthopedics at Rush. Dolphins releasing 5-time All-Pro WR Tyreek Hill. NFL.com. NFL free agency. Tyreek Hill seeks to sign with contender when healthy. CBS Sports. Tyreek Hill free agency rumors. The latest Yahoo Sports. 5 best free agent landing spots for Tyreek Hill. Bleacher Report. Dolphins releases All-Pro Tyreek Hill. WR vows he'll be born again. AOL. Dolphins to release star wide receiver Tyreek Hill. Reports. AOL. Dolphins set to release 8-time Pro Bowl WR Tyreek Hill. Miami Herald via AOL. Ex-Dolphins WR Tyreek Hill says he still has no power in injured leg. Yahoo Sports. Free agent WR Tyreek Hill provides update after season-ending injury. NFL.com. Why Tyreek Hill's NFL career could be in jeopardy. CBS Sports. Tyreek Hill shares alarming injury update amid free agency rumors. Yardbarker. Tyreek Hill already seen walking just days after major knee injury. SI. Agent. Tyreek Hill's surgery went well. He will play in 2026 ESPN Africa. https://africa.espn.com's NFL story /46,438,904 Dolphins were Tyreek Hill.